I'm Cynthia Brooking. I live on the Gold Coast, just moved into the countryside a little bit, and Gold Coast in Queensland. And yeah, I've been working for MI now for, I don't know how many years, maybe 7 or something. I honestly don't know. But I've been probably doing conflict resolution all my life. It feels like, with being in a family and also being married and having children and having grandchildren. So there you go. Ask my family, they say I created, but you would never ever say that, would you? No, well, I don't. I love resolving it. I just want to talk about an aspect of it. Like, there's so many layers to this, really. There is so many layers. And as a kid, I was always a person that wanted to know, why do people do things? Why do they do that? What causes this reaction? Or what's happened in their life for them to be like this and this? And I've just come up, it's funny that this is going to be very informal and I'm very pragmatic. So it's really how the rubber meets the road when you're really resolving conflict. You can look in your course and we can have a look at that. You can see all the academic side of things and look at all these wheels and different things, and that's fine. You'll get another look at it. But I'm going to take you through from the eyes of a mediator and what we see and what sort of resonates, and just give you some ideas of what to look out for, in my opinion, anyway. So for what it's worth, you will probably enjoy some of the things that I'll bring up as yeah. Okay, I don't know where this sits with you, but one of the things that I find really quite incredible is some statistics here. Do you know that 85% of workplace conflicts are caused by misunderstandings? Does that surprise you? You know what I find in mediation a lot is people jumping to conclusions, presuming to know why someone's done something, and just misunderstanding a person's perspective. I don't know where that statistic came from, but anyway, our lovely AI gave me that information before. Whether that's correct or not, I don't know. I don't know enough about AI to know that, but I can tell you what, I notice some of the things that I ask my students to look out for on both sides. I teach and train the FDR course as well. I teach and train on both the NMAS, AMDRAS, and the FDR side. And a lot of conflict that I see, having done a lot of contracting work and things like that, people's personalities come into conflict. People don't like certain aspects about people's personalities. They might be very directive or they might be very laid back about something. And we do see that there is some types of personality types that you'll look through on the course. So let me see what you've got. We've got there, I think there's the accommodating, there's the, have some of you read through that? What you got a handle on what those aspects of them are? The different types of, I'll just quickly bring that
Not
up.
yet.
Because
I'm still to catch up on the readings, but
still catching
this
up on those.
this week,
Okay,
yep.
that's all right. So let me have a look here. So we've got the competing style, whatever it takes to win, let's get in and do it. We've got the avoiding style, which is, say style, let's see. It is a conflict style, it is, yes. They don't want to engage due to fear of another, for whatever reason it is. So it's better just to avoid the situation. There's a compromise. So let's get some of what we want, even if we can't get all of what we want. And then there's your collaborating style, which is looking for a win-win outcome. Now, that's for as a mediator, as a facilitator mediator, it's more a collaborative style. But you also have to realize that when we do have a win-win, that means that someone's winning and someone's losing at that point, and then somebody else is on the other side might be winning and somebody else might be losing. So the collaborative style is not necessarily you getting everything that you want, but it's getting some of what you want. And then, of course, you have the combative, or the persons that are really rigid in what they're doing. So as I said, there's so many layers, and I find that there's your personality types. When I've done real mediations, you'll find a person that's very much keeps within themselves. Say, I'm drawn to a hospital that I had to go to and do a mediation there. And there was one girl that was really friendly and she just wanted to talk to everybody and was not happy that her boss didn't make it her business every day to stop and chat to her. And so over the course of time, she was just built up, and she just didn't like working with her. And this boss had to walk past her desk at a little distance to go to the bathroom. And she, like I said, what's your expectation around your boss and how you interrelate together? And she said she could at least just stop and say hello. By the way, hello, Paul. Welcome. Good to see you. Yeah, and that we could not. I tried everything in my palette of conflict resolution to try and get some resolve to this resolution to this situation in the hospital where they butted heads. The person that was a boss, she could see it. She wasn't, like, in my opinion, and I'm not allowed to have one necessarily, but you look at it and you think she was doing her best at what she could do. It was her personality. She kept to herself, and that was that. And the other person could not accept that. So you're going to find this in the mediation. I did an intake this morning with one of our interns, and I had a little smile inside, not outside, because the guy was talking about how he actually said, what did he say? He was talking about the fact that he doesn't like to walk away from a problem and for there to be baggage between them. And he's been like that with all of his relationships. And I just wanted to have a little chuckle inside. All these relationships have broken down, and he doesn't like there to be any bad blood. Who's the common denominator there? Everywhere he goes, there he is. And I think this is one of the things that when we're dealing with conflict and dealing with people in conflict, it's being mindful that we actually are aware of our self-talk, because we have unconscious biases that we have in our head too. We might look at it and think, and I've noticed this with some of my interns, that sometimes it's easy for them to have had some conversations prior to the intake, making assessing, I think we might need to do this, or I think this is going to be this. And I'll say, look, let's just not overthink it right now. Let's wait till we get to the intake and get all the information, and then we can look at what we've got on our hands and then deal with it. And this is what you're going to be doing with your mediations. You're going to be listen to the intake, and it's very easy for us sometimes to be able to look at some of the scenarios. And I do fall for it too sometimes. You think, oh my goodness, how am I going to deal with this? You know what? At the end of the day, with conflict, you have to be able to have people talk and communicate together. You have to be able to have them be able to have some form of relationship. And today, we're doing a shuttle after this for the same one. And basically, it's like, I don't want to ever see that person. Don't want to have to talk to them. And I made a very strong point at the end. And you're going to have to do this sometimes as a mediator and say, look, I want you to think very carefully before you come back to the main mediation about how you wish to communicate over the things that you're going to need to communicate about, because you can't resolve anything if you can't choose one form of one form of communication between each other to be able to resolve things, whether you have to come back to the house, whether you have to decide on whether it's a good price that the house is being sold for, or what's going to happen to the dog and the cat, and how you're going to move the cat or the dog from one house to the other, whoever's keeping it. You get that, don't you, Sharon? Yeah. So I will tell you, if you're one of my students, that one of the key things that I believe needs to be on the agenda is communication, or relationship and communication, because nobody is going to be paying you thousands of dollars if they can't communicate. So the things that I would like to put out there is the story that you have in your head too, and the story that they have in their head. And it's about guiding the party to give you some facts rather than, look, I think she wants to do this or that. And that often starts off with a mediation. It happened last night when I did my demo mediation. I think he wants this and this. And it's just, okay, come in, stop it, and just say, look, We're just going to keep away from what we think at the moment. I want you to give me some facts for the opening issues. What are the facts? What are some of the issues that have brought you here today? What would you like to be resolved rather than assuming what someone may want, what someone may want or has done? I find that making judgment calls, like presuming to know why someone has done something, can be so destructive and causing conflict. Another one is when people attach so much significance to an issue that, and the more they think about it, the more significance that they give the issue, it creates a huge problem. And we only have an hour, a few hours with that person. We might have a bit of a talk with them. They've conflict that's been going on for ages. Now, if any of you are in workplace situations, my one thing that I'd like to say to you is if there is conflict in your workplace, if there is issues that need to be resolved, I highly recommend that you don't leave them to get toxic, that you deal with the issues straight away. Now, I'm going to stop there. And I'm just going to give you an opportunity to ask a few questions if you want to about some of the things that I've touched on at the moment, about some of the problems. If you want to ask me some questions, just ask me a few questions now, and then we'll talk about a few other things as we go along.
Cynthia, I have a question.
Yes.
With the pre-mediation, it's just an hour session, right, with both the parties. How do you get the types? I understand they say so many things. Then how do you know what kind of conflict that's going on? Because probably the 1 hour is not enough. Yeah.
Say that again. I'm just not sure of the question you've asked. When you're doing
Oh,
the pre-mediation,
You know, so when the pre-mediation is just an hour or 30 minutes that's been given
hour
for
and a
both the
half.
parties. Yeah. And then you think that sometimes it's really hard to pick up what's the actual issue because they will be probably overwhelmed with so many things going on. It's bombarding with information. So what actually, if I have to say, okay, these are the main three problems, like how do you do that? What's the strategy for that? Yeah.
Okay. So when they've come to you and they want to get some issues resolved in mediation and you're in the pre-mediation stage, you come into that second stage where you just confirm all their details and that. Then I ask them very directly, what are the issues and what are the concerns that you want to get resolved in this mediation today? And if I start talking about, it is very hard because this guy was doing it this morning that we were dealing with. He actually said, look, I wasn't even going to tell you all this, but he went into his story. So they go into their story and they can keep you there gridlocked for an hour. I'm asking you because you've been a mediator can you unmute yourself there? Yeah.
Yeah, if you can gently intervene and ask an open-ended question to change their train of thoughts, just so that you keep them on track to a certain degree with time constraints prior to the mediation, just to get a picture of what they think it's about, and then you can go to the other party and get their perspective so that you can actually develop what you think is the main subject of the mediation.
We're talking about pre-mediations where you've just got one person in front of you. We don't have the other party. So it can be, you can get railroaded by all the emotion around the issue that they have. Is that true? Do you find that?
Generally not. I try to keep it fairly succinct prior. I let the emotions emerge during the mediation, but during the fact-finding stage, it's often people are emotional, but at the end of the day, when they want to attend a mediation, they realise that they need to communicate. Every situation's different, but I have
It is. Yeah.
because I don't do family mediation. People are a bit more restrained rather than emotional.
Yeah, that's different. I didn't realize that you didn't. That you didn't do family. Yeah,
I do. Yeah, I do. I do more workplace. I do a lot of workplace mediation.
Yeah,
Not saying people aren't upset, but just prior to the mediation, people know what the reason for that is. Basically, to organise the mediations. I'd imagine that with the family dispute resolution, people aren't able to contain their emotions as much. Anyway.
Yeah. Yes, you're right. And workplace mediations and other ones too, there is the emotion there sometimes, and sometimes there's a power imbalance, perceived power imbalance. And you can look, basically what I want to tell you is that everything's workable to a certain degree, even if this one today, it has to be because of the risk factors and because of the how they resolve conflict is so intense that shuttle really is the only way. And I don't like doing shuttles very often, but it's how it has to be because of the content that we're dealing with. And this is what you're going to have from time to time as well. And that's why sometimes I've thought to myself, why do I need to get so much information of them about the risk factors? And today I made a deliberate attempt to say, how do you resolve conflict? How do you both resolve conflict? What happens? And the first thing he said, she's a shelter, and I just goes off the deep end, and I just withdraw. So he had been to counselling, and he had said that they said that's you're distancing yourself from the issue. And he said what she calls out is, there you go again, there you are, walking off, don't want to resolve things. And that's what you will get. And think about it in your own situations. Like I've got 3 children, one of them's quite assertive, the other one's conflict avoidant, and the other one's more of a peacemaker. You can have all different types in your workplace and your families, with your relationships, and it's how to navigate that. It's how to navigate that as a mediator. And I strongly recommend that you don't make assumptions. It's very hard. And a lot of people hold a lot of significance to the issue that they have. And and somebody else mightn't hold, it's no big deal. It's no big deal to them. Just to go into, I feel too, is a lot depends on us as a mediator and how we gather the facts and what our perceptions are, because I've seen some of the feedback on some of the material that's submitted in that, and it's hard for people to dissociate themselves from some of the issues that they might have to deal with. There may be triggers for you, from I found even with I've got about 3 mediations on at the moment, and it appears, I'm not saying it is, but it appears like men are being very difficult to deal with the females. So, and I'm being very open and honest here. With me, I found that when I'd come out with having to deal with this, if my husband used a certain tone of voice, it was like I found that I would lash out at him because I'm dealing with these 3 guys that I've really had to hold. Like today, this guy was just wanting to run ripshod over us. Don't worry about all the opening statements, and I only want to put this in and that. And we had to really rein him in to say, listen, this is our responsibility as a mediator. We need to tell you this. If you were to be able to put a complaint in against me and say that I never explained that to you in my opening statements about the confidentiality or the duty of disclosure, you have a right to go to the Attorney General's office and make a complaint against me. And I'm not going to allow that to happen. It's really important that you listen. So there's sometimes where you do need to let them know that. And it's just the only person we can change is ourselves. So it's just having that time where sometimes you can debrief and just think, wow, I just need to shake this off. This conflict is really impacting me. And I want you to be aware of that as a mediator. It can be quite confronting at times to have to deal with the different personalities that you're going to deal with in dealing with conflict. Any questions about that? Nope. Tracy, you've been in a lot of positions of authority. What have you got to say about some of the conflicts you've seen in the course of your time? What have you noticed as a common denominator? Do you also feel that if conflict is left unattended, that it can become toxic and it becomes very hard to work with in the workplace?
Absolutely. I think you're right about the whole people jumping to conclusions about things ahead of time and not actually talking it out with people. And like even my husband's having a conflict with another co-worker at work, and he's trying, because I'm trying to coach him in a way of, have you tried talking to him about whatever is rubbing each other up the wrong way. And I've tried, he won't engage with me. And it has actually started to build on that. And I can see there's a lot more that's going to explode and come out of that if they don't figure this out between them. So yeah, I can definitely see how. And I think you're right as well. Personalities, they're very different in personalities and the way that they engage with their team. And that's where it started from. So yeah, I can absolutely see the benefits of talking to each other and trying to find ways of communicating well with each other. But some people just don't know how to.
That's exactly right. And it's looking at that, that there's a really good, I'll put it in the chat before I leave. There's a 15-minute video that actually talks about some of this that I found online in preparing for this. And I thought, this is really good. It explains things in quite a meaningful way. And what Tracy just said then is you'll have the person, it explains where a person might be very thorough and they'll put a lot of time and effort into preparing a project or whatever. And then another colleague might come in and just look over it for 5 minutes and then just go, oh, you need to do this and this. And the person will take umbrage at that and just thinking, oh, blimey, I put hours and hours in this, and he thinks that he can just go snap his fingers like that and make a decision. And and the person in there was saying, if we look at the disc, that's one of there's so many ways of defining people's behavior, their personality, how they do things. And one of them I remember when my husband was in leadership that he got all of his heads of departments to go and do some of those, what is it, I know they did the Dale Carnegie one, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I know they did the DISC one where they worked out what personality styles they were. They did quite a bit of that as leadership training to help each other work with whatever personality types. And it's actually quite good in general. You said something else, Tracy, that I was thinking was important too. You'll often find too that I've found this over the course of time is in our family of origin, there's been ways that we've dealt with conflict. There's ways that we've been brought up to know what's right, what's wrong, or whatever that might be. We bring that into our life, into our family life, we bring it into our work life. And there might be triggers, there might be certain things that have happened in that. And I think I've seen this and heard this when you have a D&M with some people. And the guy said it today. He made mention of his stepmother who used to yell and scream at them and that. And so he's chosen not to do that. And I just thought it's interesting, isn't it, how we can bring those things. And he's in his middle age now, had several broken relationships. He was talking about his ex-wife and mother of his children. And I thought I think we have to be very aware of where all this comes from and what we have to do as mediators to look at that. It's just being aware of it within ourselves and how we are going to be as a mediator. I've found that's been very beneficial. One of the things, when you were talking, Tracy, is teaching people to ask questions rather than if you say you shouldn't do that, this is this and this, if we say that to our children or whatever, immediately the walls can come up. It's looking for those walls that come up when we're dealing with people that are in conflict. And rather asking a question, and as a facilitative mediator, that's part of our major role is asking questions. And I remember in our own personal time there was a situation with one of our family members, and my husband was painting and he had the aircon on, and I think he had just the fan lightly going on, and one of the family members came along and just saw what he was doing, turned the aircon off, turned the fan off, made some complaint about wasting power or something or other, and then walked outside. And I felt a little bit incensed about that. And I remember thinking, okay, Cynthia, deal with this as if you were in a mediation. Deal with this so that you're not going to create more conflict. So I went out and I just said, I'm not feeling very happy. I need to ask you a question. If you came into the house and we were employing a painter to paint this house and paying them to do it, and they had the aircon on and the fan on, would you come along and turn that off and walk out and treat a person that was employed to do that? And I got a look like a deer in headlights, and the reality hit them. And it was like, no, did I do that? Did I complain? I said, evidently. And I said, and the immediate reaction, which I think was really good, was, I'm really sorry. I should never have done that. I apologize. So if you can get something like that and deal with it straight away, it can stop a lot of angst, but just ask that question. It's not like, why did you come here and do that? Why did you go and do that? That's just so rude. You know, if you were to deal with it like that. But if you ask a simple question like that, you can resolve conflicts in a much more meaningful way. And I know that, I don't know what it's called again, Rowena, it's that IDRS, whatever it is, that those guys that have got, what
I
is
see.
that? That one.
Interact community support. Interact Community Dispute Resolution Service, or
That one.
ICDRS.
Yep. That one. But a couple of the guys on that, they've said it's been so beneficial for them. Like they were with the Gold Coast, wasn't it? The Little Nippers and
They were doing surf life saving. Reema's done one recently and resolved it in pre-mediation. So
Excellent.
Yes, but
Rima.
I don't know how.
Early
Sorry, can you hear me?
resolution.
I don't know how that happens. Like, she's like 90-year-old and had this issue for more than a year regarding the neighbor's wine in her property. And I gave her a call, gave her time to speak, and she was very happy that I called her. And that was then I did the intake. And we were discussing, and she like said something, and we were discussing the issue. And then the next couple of days later, and I was meant to write a letter, and she said, you know what, I got to hear from my neighbor, and I said, oh my God, it's like she told me probably 1,000 times thank you. And
It's amazing. This is why I love it. You've gone, yeah. It's really rewarding when you can help people resolve issues. I remember doing a mediation with Kian actually, and where it was a transformative relationship one. And there were these two sisters, and they'd been fighting over family property. And one of the parties was a lawyer, and the other sister was more in the arts. She was an artist kind of person and that, and she wanted to do this and wanted to do that, and was very accusing of her sister. And they hadn't talked for years, and she never wanted to go back onto the family property. But anyway, she had agreed to come and do the mediation at her sister's place, even though they hadn't seen each other. So anyway, they were talking about things, and she was going, why are you so interested in Dad's property? Why you never were interested in Dad's property, and you're saying that you were there with the little brother and that. And I started to pick up a red flag, and I said to her, they were talking a little bit, and she was the more verbose one, and the sister that was the lawyer, who was a property lawyer actually, she was very quiet and that. And I wasn't saying a lot, and then in the end I said, so let's just dissect what's just been said there. And I asked the sister that was property one, who the sister was saying, jumping to conclusions, saying you never were interested in this property. And I said, so tell me, you mentioned that you had been to this property with your brother and your dad. When would this have been? When were you mainly doing that? Tell us a little bit of context around that. Don't hesitate to ask for context around some of the things that they say. And she said, oh, it was when I was a teenager, and it was that, and Dad would take us both up there. And she just mentioned it all. She didn't go into a lot of detail. And then I turned to the other sister and I said, so when your sister there was that age, where were you? What age were you? And she looked about it, and you could see her little brain ticking over there. And she said, oh, I was in boarding school during that time. And I said, so were you aware when you were in boarding school that your dad and your sister were going up there? No, I had no idea. So sometimes you can find that missed information that they've already jumped to conclusion. You never ever were interested in it. You never went to it. She wasn't even around to know that. Do you know what I mean? So Often you'll find this, and then it was like, oh, that puts a whole new slant on things. And so we were able to talk around things around that. And the long and the short of it was so rewarding because she stayed on and had tea with her sister and mended the relationship between themselves. They both had misconceptions about how things were around the family property, and she overcame a huge obstacle of wanting to go back and revisit that family property because she had attached a lot of significant negative details around that. And the reason they came to mediation was because the daughters actually pushed their mothers, because they were cousins, first cousins, and they were good friends, and they said, mums, let's get this sorted. Let's get this worked out together. So I've seen some really good ones happen like that. And yeah, any questions around that at the moment with what we've dealt with so far? Be in the moment to listen for things that you need to ask questions about. Don't be scared. Look, I'm just going back to that. What did you mean by that? Or what was happening then? Even if there is a power imbalance. Another one was with a principal. She was an older lady. She was the fifth highest. There was 5 principals in the school. She was the highest ranking one, and she was at loggerheads with one of the girls in the office. And basically she said to me in the pre-mediation, the issue was, I never want to see her again. I don't want to have anything to do with her. And the girl in the office was saying, I feel really uncomfortable having this mediation because she's the principal here. I'm only the girl in the office. And I reassured her. She wanted to actually bring a support person, and it was the business manager at the school. And I said no, because personally, I thought it was a conflict of interest having the business manager there. And also, personally, I don't ever allow one person to have a support person and the other person not, because there's a perception of bias there, in my opinion. So I told her, I reassured her, I said, as a mediator, we are totally do not take sides. We support both of you to get an outcome. I can promise you that I will be listening to both sides and that there will be no power imbalances during the mediation. And it was the case. There was no power imbalances. They both got to state. And right at the end, the principal said, you know what? I never knew that I impacted you like that. Let's have a cup of tea together. Let's meet up and have a cup of tea there. That was from her saying, I never want to see her again. So it's those, again, I can't say it enough. It's that jumping to conclusions, those perceptions that people have. It does cause a lot of conflict. And Rima might remember, I nailed it on the head. If I don't know whether I don't know whether Paul's heard me say it. I do not like in my trainings to allow the students to make assumptions, to allow the parties to make assumptions. I like to know the facts or how they perceive it, how they feel about it, what they think about it, rather than I think he's just doing this or I think she's just doing that. I usually jump on that. Yeah. Any questions about that?
Do you let them stop talking before you jump into that, or do you wait till they finish and then say?
Last night, I love this one. It was the elder dispute in the I don't think it's on you. I think Joanne said she wasn't going to put it on the Andros one. But it's the one where both of the siblings are making a decision about whether mum can live in the house or whether the brother, Adam, wants to put her in a nursing home, a facilitated nursing home where she has care. And she started the player came in and she was saying, oh, he just thinks this, and he just really started to go in. And I just came in then and I just said, look, let's just not make any assumptions right here. I really would like to listen to the facts and to the issues that have brought you here today. And I just nicely cut in and asked for that. So you can do that. Don't be scared to come in nicely and interrupt.
Okay.
Sharon said that as well. Sometimes you need to redirect and to set sail. You are the mediator in the room. It is their mediation, but you are the rudder for the boat, okay? So you sail it in whatever direction that you want to sail it in. Any questions at all? So, no, yes, no, any comments? So just a very quick thing, there's different types of workplace conflicts. You've got this is referring to some of the information I had here, is your task-based conflicts, your leadership conflicts. There might be work style conflicts, conflicts from discrimination, creative idea conflicts. That's a really interesting one. I smile about that even in families. I've got a very creative son and he's always, thinking, oh, we should do this and this, but no practical application. And it's just, and can drive his sisters a little bit crazy sometimes. But there are those people that are there and they are valuable too, but they mightn't all, some of the ideas that they want to bring forward in a workplace. Am I treading on anyone's toes here? You're our creative one, Roanna. Is anyone stamping on your toes about that lately? No, that's good.
But I have had it in the past.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Everyone's opinion's valuable. It's just whether it will work now or later. Yeah. So thank you, Rima. Thank you.
We've had Celeste join us as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I did see her just in the background there. Yeah. Why is resolving workplace conflict necessary? It says here in this information that I've got that 85% of employees face conflicts and 9% of workers say that conflicts reduce employee ability to complete projects. That seems pretty vast. But you know what? I often say when I'm doing workplace mediations and you're dealing with issues in there, if you think about it, you think about how many hours you're working in a workplace. You leave home at whatever time it is to go to your job. You're in there. And if you're working with people 8 hours a day that you don't really have a high value for, it makes life pretty uncomfortable. And then you go home and then you're doing that 5 days a week. And your time at work is often probably a bit more than what it is at home sometimes. Some common causes of workplace conflict can be unclarified work job roles, poor responsibility distribution in the workplace. It can be a lack of opportunities where people feel that they need to have promotion or they don't feel like the situation is being treated fairly in there. Unhappy employees and poor work environment. It's not a good environment to be in. There can be personality differences. This article is saying that 49% of conflicts in offices and places like that happen due to personality clashes, and that's what we talked about earlier on. And then there's the unrealistic expectations of workers, unclear company policies, unresolved harassment issues, and lack of promotions at work. They're some of the things that they've identified as common causes of issues in the workplace. The other things that I've noticed is an issue too that sometimes can be a problem is whether you're a person that is extremely task orientated, are you a person that's more task orientated over people orientated. So would you compromise? I remember doing a test one time when I was doing one of my courses, whatever it might have been, when I was doing psychology or one of those things, and they gave us a test on whether you were more task or personal orientated. Like, in other words, if I'm doing a task, will I compromise a relationship to keep doing that task, or would I stop my task for a little bit so that I can relate and keep that personal connection happening, relational connection? And that can be a big issue in an office. Has anyone ever found that in a workplace environment where task over people causes an issue? Yeah. Yeah, it is. And it's like they mean because they've got a task, they've got something they want to do. But sometimes people just need a little bit of TLC along the way in the workplace, and that can cause that conflict. And the more they think about it, the more they ponder it, and the more they reflect on it, they start attaching a lot of significance that maybe they're not liked or they're not seen as significant in the workplace. So again, I can't say it enough. Yes, thank you, Celeste. But yeah, Thank you for responding to that. How can you tackle workplace conflicts? The first thing to do is to try and talk to the person if possible. Look, what's happening here? Sometimes it's possible, other times it's not. I think it's always important to maybe talk about the issue and try not to blame. I think that's really important. Listen to both sides of the story. When I'm doing a mediation, I always look for points of agreement. When I start off even in exploration, I like to look at what things like prior. I'm looking for some common ground that they may have enjoyed some time with. And I said that to the two ladies that were in the hospital there. What was it like initially? How did you interact initially, trying to get some common ground? But yeah, it had gone on so long that it had become toxic. Yeah.
I was talking to a nurse recently who was saying that I was saying that I was looking at doing my mediation training, and she works as a nurse, and she actually said you would have weeks and weeks worth of work in nursing because there's so much conflict in the nursing industry that it's
Yep. Absolutely. I 100%. I was actually just saying something to somebody just recently. They were saying, it was one of my students that asked to meet up. She said, where can I get into workplace mediation? I said, look, I've done contracting work, so I don't really know. I haven't been seeking it in the workplace. I seek it more in the FDR side of things, and it comes to me rather than it comes to me more than what the other one does. But I said, if you go into somehow, if you've got any contacts in the hospital industries, anywhere now, my brother and sister both have worked for years, nursing practitioner and manager, and NUM, they call them, nurse unit manager or something. He just said it's chronic in there. In the nursing industry, and just recently spoke to a person again, and they were in ER, and one of the head doctors was actually there too, and he said, yeah, it's really bad. People become very positional about, and we've got a lot of diversity in our hospitals now, so that also different people. Like I remember my brother was saying that there was quite a large contingent from one of the countries outside of our country, and they like to send a lot of money home to their families. And his boss had put him in there to try and equalize and spread out the nursing. So in nursing, if you work a Saturday or Sunday, you get much higher rates. So you get double time on a Sunday, time and a half, say, on a Saturday. And some of the girls were really hogging those times because they wanted to be able to provide for their families and extended families. And he came across, my brother was saying that he really struggled to be able to break up that, what would you call it, the expectation that this was their right to be able to have this and not have to share it with other members in the workforce. So, yeah, a big one.
Yeah, healthcare and education seem to be the big ones.
And I've talked to Peter about that, because that's what Peter Johnson does. He's our external assessor. He worked for many years in Fair Work Australia. No, not Fair Work Australia, sorry, in the what we call QCAT down your way. It's VCAT, NCAT, wherever you are. And years, and he's been in management and that and there, and he's done thousands of mediations. And yeah, he said he's seeing some pretty interesting stuff in the education side of things between headmasters and parents, and what they think that they can get away with in schools these days. Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, I just saw a stat about principals today, or heard it on the radio, about it's an increase in, no, I must have read it. It was ACU have just done a study, and it's been over since 2011, and it's the worst it's ever been, with 1 in 5 wanting to resign because of violence and stuff as well.
This is the thing, and I used to work in the social services too, especially with kids, the worst of the worst, the kids that had been taken out of home and were in the system, and there's no penalty for the things that they do. There's no and the kids in the school these days, so many of them come from broken homes, so many of them are experiencing violence. And the headmasters are tied. They can't give any correction to them, and if they suspend too many kids or expel them, those statistics go against them as a teacher. So their hands are tied. Yeah, so I actually asked a friend of mine, how do you deal with conflict in the classroom, even with kids, like when they misbehave and everything? And he was telling me, she said, and because I know that she's quite strict. And this is the thing, conflict. I said to my grandson one time, I said to him, he was all goo-gar over his girlfriend, he's in his early 20s and that. And I said, mate, I said, wait till you have your first conflict and see how you both resolve conflict. Then you'll know how this relationship's going to go. And he goes, oh, Grandma, come on. And he was saying that. And then it was maybe, I don't know, a year or 2 years ago. He said, you know what? You are so right. You are so right about that. I just smiled and said, I'm right about a lot of things, boy. Yeah. But anyway, we'll leave it at that. It's 2 minutes to
Yeah, I
1.
was going to say you got 2 minutes.
Yeah, but if there's any questions or any comments that any of you want to make, this has been very informal. I just wanted to talk to you about the nitty-gritty of what it's really like out there, and hopefully it's given you a few pointers on how, yeah, what you can and can't do.